Uh, turn that off. Welcome everyone to Rochester Xamarin this month. It is February 12th, 2020, and I got the dates right this time. Last time I said 2019, so I'm doing better already. Uh, Before we get started with our speaker today, let me update my slide deck. All right, there we go. I'd like to thank our sponsors. .NET Foundation always provides us our Meetup.com subscription and some of the hassles of that software. And my company, File on Q, sponsors our online meeting to make this available for anyone anywhere in the world. So I always want to thank them. For announcements this month, I don't have a whole lot, I guess, quantity wise, but quality wise, if you've been following stuff with Xamarin and Surface, the dual screen SDKs have been released for Xamarin Forms. There was a big event they had the other day for Windows developers. I know our friends over at Uno as well have been doing quite a bit for dual screen support in the for everyone getting ready for the release of the new dual screen foldable tablet and phone that's coming out later this year. I didn't get a chance. Excuse me. I didn't get a chance to ask anyone in the community if they had any announcements. I spoke with Claudio before this, and their company is hiring Xamarin developers. Claudio, if you want to just drop your email in the chat, I will include it on the um, in our announcement links as well when we post this on YouTube. So anyone that's interested, they're looking for Xamarin developers. If anyone else has any community news they want to share, feel free to open up your mic real quick. I didn't get a chance to really ask anyone if they had stuff. No? Okay. Well, feel free to drop any community news in the chat if you had any stuff. So this month we have slides are not updating as quickly as I want them to. We have Emily Stanek here. She is a mobile developer, a graphics designer. She works over at BSI Labs in Toronto, and I'm really excited to have her here talking about mobile design and making sure that your application looks good and also as well as functions good. So it's a little different than a lot of our other talks focusing on design. It's something that's really important that I don't think gets enough time to look at. So without any further ado, I'm going to hand over the presenter over to Emily, and she can take it away.
All right. Hey, everyone.
All right. Did I make you presenter?
Not yet.
I might need to stop presenting first. Let me try that. Make presenter. Oh, there. How about now?
There we go. Yes.
Perfect.
All right. All right. It's not picking up Adobe for me. Okay. I'm just going to share this screen. Okay. Let's get back to number 1 here. All right. Can everyone see my presentation here?
Yep, mobile design basics.
Okay, perfect. All right, so as Andrew said, I'm going to be speaking about mobile design basics. So I'll just get started right away. Okay, so I'm going to do a little introduction about myself, even though Andrew just did one, that's fine. And then I'm going to touch on basic design principles, specifically navigation and menus. I'm going to show some sample layouts that are like a good example of what to aim for. And I'm going to touch on accessibility. And then I'm going to share some resources and inspiration that I use when I'm designing for mobile apps. All right, so I'm Emily Stanek. I'm a graphic designer and software developer at BSI Labs in Toronto. And I'm also a co-organizer for the TO Mobile Devs meetup here in Toronto. And I'm a skiing enthusiast, so you can catch me out on the slopes in my vintage one-piece neon ski suit. So some basic design principles is what we're going to touch on first. So for user experience design, you really want to focus on having a clear navigation flow, especially when it comes to mobile. You don't have a lot of real estate as opposed to something like desktop apps. So it's really important to make sure that your navigation is easy to follow and you're following normal app kind of layouts. So familiar locations for important call to actions. So, like your hamburger menu, your user profile. Sometimes you might have a little like add button in the bottom corner. These are important things to follow to make sure that users know where to go when they're using your app. You want to have a simple and clear visual design. This makes it easier for users to easier for users to navigate because there's less clutter. It's it's just better to look at. If you open an app and there's just too much going on, if there's too much copy, you might just close it right away. So it's really important to keep it simple. Having concise copy is also important because you don't want to overwhelm your users. And also having thoughtful transitions and animations can help guide your user through your app. So like if you have a feature that uses like a swipe gesture, you could show like a little, like a little hand like swiping. Or if you need someone to press a button, then you can make that button like pop or change color. Obviously, having good app performance is really important because if your user feels frustrated by using your app because it's not fast, then they might just close it, delete it, and never use it again. And last but not least is accessibility. So we're going to jump into navigation and menus. Like I just said, navigation needs to be even more intuitive on mobile devices. You want to make sure you're using recognizable design patterns, such as having a hamburger menu. It's not really specific to left or right. I've seen it used on both sides, and it's intuitive either side, so it doesn't really matter. It's up to personal preference. But obviously, if you have it on your right side, you want to make sure that your menu slides out from the right. If you have it on the left side, you want to make sure it slides out from the left side. Also, these little user profile buttons, they're usually in the top bar, so you want to make sure that you keep that up there as well. As for menu, you want to use using icons in your menu, I think is a really good way to help users because it guides them and shows them what each page is kind of about. It's like almost like a little summary picture. And obviously, if you have a desktop version of your app, say like a website, you want to make sure that you're making sure that the mobile app kind of corresponds with that. So they look similar, they have similar layouts. If you have a menu on the left, keep your menu on the left, things like that. And obviously branding would come into that where you want to use the same images and color. So some general guidelines. You don't want to hide useful and like non-sensitive information behind a login. So for example, like a bank app, if you're just looking for like a location to your bank, for instance, you don't want to have to sign in and go to like location. It's not intuitive. You might as well just show that somewhere that you don't have to log into the app, or else people are just going to go to like Google and just type in like, I don't know, Bank of Montreal or whatever. You want to utilize common gestures, so pinching and swiping. I find it's really useful when you're in an app and you just swipe and the menu comes out like a little drawer. Like it's more intuitive that way. Not all people use these gestures, but if they do, then it's nice to have that incorporated into your app. It makes it easier and more intuitive for users. So we also have the thumb zone. The thumb zone is kind of like this area from the bottom left of the screen, kind of up to the middle right. And as you can see in this example here, they're using that quite well because they have two buttons. So their call to actions are in that thumb zone, add to cart and like. So this is a good example. Having a clear typographic hierarchy is also important. It helps with navigation as well because if you have, like your headers that are really big, then it kind of just guides users down the page to where they need to go. Um, Also, loading icons are really like a really big thing, because if you're in an app and you're on a page and it's kind of taking a really long time to load and it's just a blank page and there's no loading icon, then you have no idea what's going on. You don't know if the app is crashing or what's happening. So at least a loading icon there just kind of indicates like, hey, it's taking a little longer than usual. So then your user won't just quit the app and leave. I mean, they still might if it takes like 3 minutes, but you know, loading icon kind of helps keep them around for a little longer. Also, the clear animations and transitions, like I touched on before, you know, showing a swipe gesture or having your buttons pop up really helps users, guide them in the right direction. All right, so now we're going to get into some examples. So this one shows like a good menu here. We have, it's kind of similar to that layout from before, but basically it has icons here that demonstrate like what each page is about. You know, the top bar is really simple. We just have like a navigation button to go back. The user profile is always accessible on each page. And then they're also using the thumb zone in the second page here with the new message button. So this is a really good example of a user layout. We also have this music app here. I like this one because it kind of showed, like, obviously usually buttons are just like a different color, like a kind of like pop color, but these ones, it's like really muted, but you can tell it's a button because it has a shadow. They're also using that bottom kind of thumb zone with the pause button and then the, you know, the back and forward buttons, and just a simple top layout, which is really nice. And then this one's a little different. It's obviously not my, I shouldn't say obviously, but it's not my favorite design-wise, but this one uses the bottom bar here that kind of uses, it kind of holds all the things that users normally do. So like repetitive things. It's kind of like on Pinterest that has and they have a bottom bar that has like a search, notifications, and the user profile. And it's just like the things that you would normally press on are just right in front of your face as opposed to being hidden behind a little menu. So this one's nice. And it also uses that thumb area with the add to meal and the like button. All right, so now we're going to touch on accessibility, which is the last topic. Accessibility is obviously really important in mobile apps, and sometimes I think it might be a little bit overlooked. So here are some guidelines that I've found pretty useful. Recently, I learned that if you use rems for text instead of pixels, it scales better. And this is because if you set, like, if you're using accessibility features on a phone and you set the minimum text to be, say, like 20 pixels, then everything scales up to 20 pixels and there's no type hierarchy anymore. But if you use rems, because of the way rems scale, then it keeps your type hierarchy in place. So that's something really important to consider when you're designing apps. Obviously, for people who are visually impaired, like making use of those Android and iOS native features such as talkback and voiceover is really important. I mean, that's something you can just include in your app while you're designing it. You know, you just input the text into whichever file it is. I haven't actually worked on accessibility. Usually I'm just on the design side of things. So, but I mean, if you know how to do it, then you should definitely put it in there. Also for touchscreen targets, this one holds near and dear to my heart because of Snapchat. So if you don't have your touchscreen targets if they're less than 7 millimeters, then like it's almost impossible. For Snapchat, for me, when I go into a chat and then I'm talking to people in the chat and then I hit the back arrow at the top, I almost always hit the video call button, like every single time without fail. It's unbelievable. And I don't even have that big fingers, so it's like I can't imagine anybody else. And then the last point here is to aim for good color contrast between text and background. So this one really utilizes, like, you know, it's 100% black on 100% white and then 100% white on 100% black. And obviously that's like the go-to, but I mean, if you're designing and you're an actual designer, you usually aren't just using black and white. So this right here is a website that I've been using, which I'll just click on it now. Can you guys still see my screen? Yeah, okay. So basically you put your foreground color in here and then your background color, and it will give you your passing accessibility scores here. So if I did something else, like say I went darker here, see it automatically changes to pass or fail. So it's been really useful. We use this for our Rate the Meet app as well. So and for this one, you want to make sure that your copy is concise and easy to read. So you have to think about your end user. If the people you're writing the app for don't understand like hardcore technical language and you're just throwing like tech terms left, right, and center, then they're just going to be confused and feel like they're not ready to use this app and they're just going to leave. Or anything that's just too complicated. Like you want to make sure that your copy is simple and that like basically anyone can read it so that they can enjoy your app. Um, and this one is also a big pet peeve of mine. You want to choose relevant keyboards for your input fields. So say you're logging into an app for the first time, you're making an account and you're typing in your email and it's just the text keyboard that comes up and it doesn't have that little at symbol at the bottom. You have to go searching through your symbols for your at symbol. That drives me insane because it's so simple. Here's a little code snippet right here. You just do keyboard equals email and Xamarin Forms, and that's all you need. Just so you guys know, that's all you need. All right, so that's the end of my presentation, but I have some resources here that I use when I'm designing. So material design obviously has like a lot of, they just have like a lot of guidelines, especially for people who are beginners at designing. So you know, they show like typography, like how you should do your navigation, like, you know, all sorts of things. They even show you how to like position your buttons and stuff like that. So I found it really useful. This one's also really useful for accessibility. This is the color tool. So you can choose a foreground, like your primary color and your secondary color here and then you can check the accessibility for all of them. So it gives you a little warning saying not legible. It's like a really, really useful tool. Um, and then I just have the link here for the accessibility for Xamarin Forms. They give you an accessibility checklist. So this is just kind of some general stuff that you can do in Xamarin Forms to help you with accessibility. This is the contrast checker I just touched on, and then Dribble, which I use a lot for like, you know, just general inspiration. Um, that's where I got all of my examples today for the mobile design. So yeah, that's it. Thanks for listening, guys.
I don't have an applause, but I know some people will kill me if I got one. But that was really good. I'm gonna get started with some questions because I had. Or you mentioned a thumb zone at the bottom of the screen for making it easier to, you know, when you're holding the phone in your hand, for that thumb to be able to access certain things. So I've been
Yeah.
working on a project recently where we we have a tab bar at the bottom of the screen and we have four different menus that the user could flip through there, but we also have a floating action button above it depending on the state of the screen. And the problem that we've been running into a lot recently is users are it's a line of business app, so it's not really meant to be used on, you know, a regular phone. It's for a very specific purpose at this business, and users are accidentally hitting those tabs at the bottom. So I was starting to think maybe I should have put the tab bar at the top, or and I was wondering if you had any advice on where that tab bar should be, if it's okay to put it at the bottom, or if you think it should go at the top.
Um, so I guess that kind of comes into play with that touch zone as well, where it's like it has to be a certain size for it to work with most fingers as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I know, I mean, if something doesn't work, it would be easy to just have like the hamburger menu, but if that's not an option, then is it like one of those bars that has like the bar here and then the little button that kind of hangs over top?
No, so it's a standard it's a standard tab bar. So like the sizes and the icons all use these because in this project we're using Xamarin Shell with the tabs with the different tabs there, and they're all that standard size. The I guess the problem that I'm yeah, and I'm sorry. Um, Trying to think of a better way to describe the problem, and because you guys can see my screen, right? Or not my screen, but you see my webcam, right?
Yes.
So it's a specialized device. It's a barcode scanner. It runs Android. You can see a photo of my dog, and just like here, we have just like on the home screen here, we have all these buttons down at the bottom, and users end up holding it
Okay.
like this a lot, and then their side of their hand ends up hitting the different tabs. And uh, I was trying to think maybe I should have put the tabs at the top at that point, but then I had to rethink because we ended up doing stuff at the top where the tabs wouldn't work, and I was just interested in your thoughts about the tab bar at the bottom. If that wasn't like a good idea for us, or I don't know, just asking for opinions. I'm gonna stop
Is it
rambling.
is it just when is it just when they're like scanning that barcode? Because if like they go to a scan page, then it's almost like you could disable those buttons at the bottom while they're scanning, if that's an option.
Oh, that's a good idea. That's a really good idea.
Yeah, is that helpful?
That's helpful. I need to write that one down. That's how good of an idea that is.
I'm glad I
But
could help.
yeah, anyone have questions for Emily before we head over to group time? Somebody's got to have a question. I guarantee you, not every one of you is an expert at design. No? Okay, well, I'm going to present. Oh, was that a
Well,
question?
hey, I'll just
Hey, I have a question. Sorry about that. I was
Yeah.
struggling with the sound. When is a good, when would be preferable to use the bottom nav bar as opposed to having a hamburger icon at the top? So like a thumb
um
zone, on thumb zone, nav item.
um so for the bottom bar, you could put like commonly used menu items at the bottom, or if instead of having like a nested hamburger menu, you could just um, like put the most used buttons at the bottom and then put the rest of them in the menu. Like say your menu just gets too long, that would also be a good option. Um, yeah.
Thank you.
That's actually exactly what I did on this
Um,
app. We had tabs on the bottom where we saw a flyout menu for the less used options.
yeah, sometimes menus just they just get too big. Can't help that though.
No.
Here, I'll put my Twitter handle here so if anyone has any questions, they can just send me a message. Let me make sure I get it right.
I was working on a project a while ago and we had brand colors that we had to incorporate, and the brand colors and black and white didn't meet the contrast tests, and like
Yes.
colorblind things and stuff like that. Do you have any kind of advice on when and where it is okay to kind of ignore that in the name of branding, or how to deal with that?
Um, So for logos, I mean, like if you already have a logo and it doesn't really meet accessibility standards, like that's something that is kind of hard to deal with. So I think a lot of companies just end up leaving their logo. But for apps, if the text doesn't if it doesn't have a high enough contrast with the background, I know for what I've done a few times is I'll just use one of my main colors from the branding and then just try to find another alternative, whether it be the background or the text, to make sure that it follows accessibility. Like maybe something that's like more on the gray scale so it doesn't like hinder the branding. But yeah,
Cool, thanks.
no worries.
All right. Did you get a
Anything
screenshot of
else?
your Twitter handle?
Oh, yeah, I just put it in the chat here.
Oh, perfect. Okay, cool.
So if anyone has any more questions, you can just shoot me a message there on Twitter.
All right, and I'm going to take screen back from you. All right. Can everyone see my screen now? I'm not hearing any no's, so I'm assuming you guys can see it.
Yep, looks
So,
good.
All right. Well, before we get into group time, I always like to announce what's going on with more Xamarin. Last month we talked about doing two Rochester Xamarin sessions a month. So I have a lot of speakers lined up, and we're going to do one next Tuesday, which is going to be February 18th at 6:30. And the plan going forward is it's going to be on a Tuesday or Thursday the week after our Wednesday presentation. I know some of you guys from Toronto have your user group at the same time. I realized that 5 minutes before this meeting. So we're going to record it, and if you guys can't come, you'll be able to watch a recording. I think we're going to try and push for Thursdays after this. But that's going to be our next session, and then after that, it'll be the Wednesday like we usually do. And thanks again, everyone, for coming. Thanks, Emily, for presenting. And we're going to go into group time, and I'm going to stop the recording.